Final hour overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Our best bets later in the hour. Our friend Sara Orlesky coming up from Winnipeg. The Jets are the hottest team in, I'd say sports, but Kansas City's 8-0. The Chiefs are 8-0.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they're dominant.
Can't be the hottest team in sports.
Chiefs are 8-0 after 2 Super Bowls straight.
That's what's terrifying, is they've won 2 in a row. They're 8-0. They look like they're just kind of figuring things out. And they bring in DeAndre Hopkins. He immediately turns back the clock and looks like a stud. Kelsey, will be ready to go in the playoffs. Like, he's just going to go about his season and be ready to pop come playoff time. They're working out a new secondary. They have young players who are getting a lot of reps in now, so they're ready to go come playoff time. And everything's going to go through Arrowhead, and that's an incredibly difficult place to play. Like, they just have everything going for them. It's terrifying.
They're a tight machine, and they've got that culture where everybody just buys in when they get there. And Andy Reid and Mahomes. I mean, Mahomes is pushing on GOAT status.
He's
type
the man.
Of thing, right?
Yeah,
so
like it's
he's
just
the man.
there's not even a hater out there in media. You know how, like, generally in the States, there's
one guy that says they're not for real.
Skip Bayless hates LeBron, right?
Yeah,
Isn't
like
that?
Skip, that was his thing forever. It didn't matter LeBron. It didn't matter what he did. He'd find something he didn't like.
Yeah.
And that was his persona. And there's no one that I can think of, or I haven't seen a viewpoint from anyone trying to break down Mahomes or the Chiefs. It's like they've built themselves up that quickly, where what's naturally going to happen if they keep winning is fatigue's going to hit, just like with the Patriots, and people are just going to get bored with it and be aggravated by their greatness, yet still captivated because you can't get enough, where like the Pats, they just went to the Super Bowl like every year. Like, they're back, man. Media day, it's Belichick, miserable, not saying anything.
Do you know how many times I have said to myself, I can't believe the Pats are back at the Super Bowl?
Yeah. 9 times they went.
But Steve, people started to pick at them, right? People started to go, "Oh, it's Deflategate. It's this. Hey, they're filming practices." Like, the minute that you saw that they were starting to tread into that gray area, people were like, "Oh, they've been doing it all along." And what's this all like? They did start to pick at the thread a little bit and try and unravel it there. But the Patriots just. Belichick is what he is. Like, Andy Reid is not, though.
That's the thing. Reid's a likable guy.
Very likable.
But there's probably a lot of the same qualities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Behind the scenes, he's tough. Like there have been players who have said that he literally doesn't acknowledge rookies.
Yeah. Doesn't speak to them.
Like, they walk, like they make him uncomfortable. He'll turn his back and be like, "This is awkward. Why are you looking at me? You're a rookie." Yeah. Will not talk to them. Won't address them. Will not even pretend to begin they exist.
That's so funny.
And that's his way of, I don't know. I don't know what he's trying to do there. I don't know what he's trying to nurture there. Like this hard-nosed, or I can't trust you until you've played at least 2 years, or I don't know. Like, it's not a hazing thing, but it's clearly a philosophy that's pretty hardened and pretty unwelcoming. Like the coach won't even talk to you. But it's been successful, clearly. Yeah. And they keep winning. So it's Chiefs 1, Winnipeg Jets 2. There's your two hottest teams in sports.
Yeah. I mean, and then probably some soccer team or something that is.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably some NBA teams kicking around where,
but
you could find that.
I don't know. You think of Patrick Mahomes, too, like, it's not like everything around it. Like, his brother's a problem. Didn't his dad get,
Yeah, his dad had a legal issue recently.
DUI, or like, he's had some, like, the whole package with Mahomes. It's not perfect, right? But it's he is.
He just keeps playing and winning. Right? Yeah, he keeps playing and winning, and and that's just the way it goes. All right, so Sarah Orlesky on the second hottest team in pro sports. And maybe she might argue the Bombers are actually even hotter and better. Yeah. The Blue Bombers, again, they've been very consistent for years. And, it's a big weekend here in Toronto as well in terms of Toronto and Montreal clashing, because you got the Leafs Habs on Saturday night, and the Leafs are in Montreal playing the Alouettes on Saturday afternoon. So more on that later in the week, and Sarah will join us later in the hour. But here's Darren Dreger, our TSN Hockey Insider. What's happening, Dregs?
No, not much. Just kind of looking at what you just described. Not just the week ahead, but the weekend ahead. And there's all kinds of activities going on.
Yes.
So it should be a good one.
Well, the Hall of Fame game Friday night and the Hall of Fame induction night on Monday. It's going to be a great, great weekend here. And, as for the Jets, we've been talking about them a lot today. They won again last night. The only team that's beat them is the Leafs. And everyone else, they're scoring 1 million goals. They're not giving anything up. Hellebuck's numbers are staggering. What do you make of it, and how much should we buy into what we're seeing in Winnipeg right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're going to hit a lull here. That's just a natural progression of any team in the regular season. They've been on a heater, and they're built and designed to be a playoff team. There's no question about that for me. Some of the questions that they had going into the season, wondering if they were going to have to maybe find a way to acquire like a 2-center depth on D. Well, as we have this conversation tonight, it doesn't seem like any of that is needed. But let's revisit in the next 2 weeks or so, because as I was reminded this morning in going through the Jets season to this point, which has been glowing, the next 2 weeks they've got a difficult schedule. And so that's where I think we'll learn, where this team is at. They look like they're built to be a real good playoff team. They do, but, they can come back down to earth as well.
Dregs, they do look like that, and they did look like that last year, and they blew some stock out in Monahan and Toffoli. And I told these guys last hour, I'm only making a play, I'm only making an adjustment to that team if it's a bona fide, NHL stud in his prime that's on a real bad team and on an expiring contract. As much as I like Monahan and Toffoli, those, I'm going above that. I'm going big game hunting. Yeah. If that's the only adjustment I would make. If not, I'm leaving the team the same and go get them, boys.
Right. No, I'm with you. And you got to be careful when you're meddling with chemistry too, right? And that's why right now as we're having the conversation, there's really nothing other than depth pieces that I would think the Cheveldayoff would be interested in talking about. Again, look at that second line, and for the most part, it's been Nemestikov with Cole Perfetti and Nikolai Ehlers. Well, Nikolai Ehlers has been lights out good in every aspect for the Winnipeg Jets this year. So they're going to be careful. But if there's opportunity, and I'm reminded of this by Cheveldayoff year after year, forever he was criticized as being a conventional conservative general manager. He had to keep his powder dry, and they're a budget team and all that. Well, they haven't been that for a long time, and you look at the last few years at least, probably even more than that. And I'm talking about years as in off-season and the trade deadline. And he's not afraid to roll out first-round picks and swing for the fences, but that comes with an expiry date too. And I don't know that Winnipeg is there yet, but the Ehlers conversation, as we know, is going to continue. Nikolai doesn't want to talk about it. The Jets don't want to talk about it. But, in some ways, Winnipeg is like Toronto, is like Colorado, is like any team with top forwards who are potentially going to walk out. Well, what's the value in keeping that player through the playoffs as opposed to panicking and doing something knee-jerk and grasping because you feel the need to add something? You can't let a player walk out for free. And I think Winnipeg is comfortable enough with where they're at that they're just going to roll the dice. Again, we need to see how the season plays out. As long as they remain healthy, I don't know that Cheveldayoff is going to be hungry to do anything other than what you said, Jeff. And that if there's the right piece, defensive or up front, that is a difference maker, then, maybe he considers that.
So I saw you on Insider Trading. You and I have chatted about it. Where is the league and everybody at with goaltender interference with Connor Hellebuck front and center with his comments on Monday, I think it was? Yeah,
well, it was Monday, and it was after Sunday, and that's what made it most intriguing to me was the fact that, Hellebuck waited, did not speak Sunday night. He was asked by the media, and he responded the way that he did, which I thought was respectful and to the point, but also animated enough to get the attention of everybody, the Players Association and the National Hockey League. Now, as we know, the NHL isn't going to do their business by going directly to Connor Hellebuck. I'm sure that if there was anybody with feelings hurt inside the Situation Room, they would call Kevin Cheveldayoff and they would talk about that. I do know that the Players Association did have a conversation with Connor Hellebuyck, and I think what probably rattled them was, his indication that he's about had enough of being a member of the competition committee because his voice isn't being heard. And he's got a young family, and he'd rather invest his time with his young family rather than, spending the time collecting the clips, the video evidence that he has over time, submitting it to the competition committee on their agenda, and then nothing changing. But as we talked about, Noodles, on the podcast, I guess the issue that the NHL has is, all right, well, Connor Hellebuyck has a very specific attitude and opinion. And I think we'd all agree when you look at the Hagel goal on Sunday that, if the Situation Room and the collective group that decided that they need to uphold that goal had a do-over, I think they'd change their minds. I do. There were certain people involved, certain people weren't involved, but it's largely that area of ambiguity where people don't really know. There's a gray area that's attached to it. And I think that's what frustrates Hellebuyck most. But if you went by Hellebuck's letter of the law or a goaltender's letter of the law, maybe the pendulum swings too far the other way, and that's no good either.
Yeah, well, that's the issue is, it's always subjective. It's always and I thought that particular one was ridiculous why it counted, quite frankly.
Yeah, I thought that one was actually a very glaring goaltender interference.
A horrible miss, but it speaks to how awful the process is.
Jesus, that was a goal.
Yeah,
the overhead. Watch the overhead.
Stab, kick in, push.
It was bad.
It was crazy. They allowed that.
Yeah, like Geeky pushes his right leg into the net.
But what are you going to do here? That's the problem. This is the issue. Goalies, you want some sort of interference call, then that's what you're going to get. But you can't have a scenario where you're just waving off goals all the time because that's not good for business.
No.
And, generally it goes around, comes around. There it stung Hellebuyck, and guess what? The Jets, I'll bet you, have benefited greatly at times from calls that looked ridiculous going their way. Yeah. So there's just never going to be a middle ground. It's just not going to happen if they're going to continue to review this stuff.
No, and look, so this is, way back when video review was first introduced, I'll never forget being in that media availability with Colin Campbell and Mike Murphy, and I'm sure Bill Daly and Commissioner Bettman probably spoke on it at the end of whatever the meeting was. I don't remember the year, I should. But it was the consequence that follows changes like this. So you implement video review, and we all remember how it started, and that was Matt Duchene being 25 feet offside and scoring the goal, right? So that's where it started. So the unintended consequence is why the NHL pushes back at kind of incorporating more. And every time we ask about goalie interference, some of the managers will say, well, the only way to get around it is to basically review every single goal. Like every single goal to make sure. And well, who's going to do that? How do you, if it's a clear point shot and there's nobody in front of the net and the puck crosses the line, you're going to take 15 seconds to review that? So there's always pushback to this. And it gets frustrating, but every once in a while you see an incident like we saw Sunday against Winnipeg in Winnipeg, and you're reminded that there's got to be a better way. There has to be a process that can be more concise.
The Dylan Holloway scene last night was really scary, but I don't remember ever seeing someone continue with the play the way that happened last night, where he took the puck off his throat and then continues to forecheck and battle down low.
Another 30 seconds or more.
And he's skating nonstop. He was flying down the ice after he blocked a shot. Those are – what's that like, Dregs, for – I guess a guy like you who I'm sure your phone's blowing up, and that's kind of like code red stuff for the league when a player goes down and they got to shut the period down before it even comes to an end.
Yeah, well, thankfully, they did everything right in this case. And it does sound like Dylan Holloway is going to be okay. And I haven't seen the medical information that, indicates, okay, well, what exactly happened? Because what you described, Brian, he continued in the play. And then all of a sudden he's sitting on the bench and things are going sideways, and his teammates are like, this guy needs help. And thankfully, the medical people for the Blues were on it immediately. And then by extension, you had the medical people of the National Hockey League and the organization that jumped on board, and he's off the hospital, and everything ends up the way that you would hope and expect it should. But, in that moment, I've kind of trained myself over time, and thankfully it doesn't happen very often where we have incidents like this. And knock on wood, we don't, see guys stretchered off a bench anytime soon, let alone off the ice. I mean, we kind of had that situation with Peak last night where that looked scary for a moment. But I stay away from the night of, because I don't want to be the guy that is half-assed throwing information out there that friends, family, grandparents, etc. are reading without getting anything legit. So now, you know what? In situations that look as dangerous as that did, you kind of take a back seat, I think, media-wise.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to be right on that.
Yeah.
And it's such a sensitive topic that it got obviously it immediately went viral and was trending. Yeah. And I'm sure if anyone was watching the game live, you'd be really taken aback by it. Yeah. But, luckily, sounds like he's fine. He's going to be okay and all good in St. Louis. And, Holloway and Broberg, they've been pretty good for the Blues.
Pretty solid.
Yeah, pretty solid. And, their former team, Edmonton, in action tonight. And we were obviously talking about this earlier, that McDavid's back. He only missed, I think, 3 games. What do you make of the quick recovery by Connor McDavid?
Well, all I can tell you is that the reaction when it happened in Columbus wasn't dire. It wasn't like, the club left Columbus or ended that game, and that was an ugly game for the Oilers, period. But they weren't panicking, going, we just lost Connor McDavid to a nasty high ankle, and he's going to be week to week, maybe even longer than that. They didn't feel like that. And we all watched as he left the ice, and he wasn't stumbling and bumbling and crawling to get to the bench. But you could tell that he was uncomfortable. But then he skates a few days later. What was it, 2 days later after getting home? And we're like, pardon? The team just said he's going to be a minimum 2 to 3 weeks. So they were erring on the side of caution. And I think that's just to program the market a little bit in Edmonton. But then, again, the good news comes out of the fact that he skates and he felt pretty good. So they gave him more time than probably Connor wanted. Like, honest to God, guys, there was talk, and it was probably McDavid driving it, but there was talk that he was potentially going to slip into the Sunday game against Calgary. And it obviously didn't happen. So they've given him a few extra games, but it feels, or days anyway, it feels like he dodged a pretty big bullet, and by extension, maybe the Oilers did as well.
Dregs, do you think by, giving him or shutting him down or giving him the time that this might help reset him? And what I mean by that is I didn't think he had a banner start to the season, short off season because they went deep into the playoffs. Is this maybe, you could call it a blessing in disguise where he gets an opportunity to reset himself, watch a little bit, and now he hits the ground running and we see Connor McDavid be Connor McDavid?
Well, that's the hope noodles, obviously. I pestered management in Edmonton enough, based on their start. Maybe not in the last week, not since McDavid went down. But prior to that, of course I did. Their defense looked in tatters. They were doing okay with some of their analytics offensively, other than they couldn't put the puck in the net. They couldn't score goals. And, there was some pressure on Stan Bowman, but mostly market pressure and media pressure. But the messaging that I kept getting back was an obvious one. Once our top players kick in, like Leon Draisaitl and Zach Hyman and Victor Arvidsson comes online, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins needs to still play better. And I would include Connor McDavid in that assessment as well. So, maybe being away from the team, or at least from the regular season, does get him to push that reset button. Because, hey, I mean, he kind of led the charge coming out of training camp. Okay, enough talking about Game 7 and Stanley Cup Final and what did or didn't happen last year. We have to move on. Well, that's the sentiment of everybody, from ownership down. But you've got to pick up where you left off. You've got to prove to yourselves internally that you're a legit top Stanley Cup contender. How many of us picked them to win the Stanley Cup this year? Like, majority of people picked Edmonton. So maybe that's the kind of nudge that McDavid needs to get him back on track.
Darren, have you heard that the Predators are going to do an in-season rebuild and they're going to be ready to rock for the playoffs? Trotzy came out today and said they're rebuilding. I don't know how he's going to do that one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know either. And I'm going to try and find out before insider trading tomorrow. I can appreciate Barry Trotz and the fact that he's feeling it. Of course he is. You don't think Andrew Burnett is losing sleep at night trying to figure out, okay, what's going to get Steven Stamkos going here? What's going to get John Marchessault going here? We had a pretty good thing developing, and then we decided to go big game hunting, and we brought in 2-3 significant pieces, and it hasn't worked. And we had Stamkos on the podcast not that long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about the challenges, right, of playing his entire NHL career in Tampa Bay and just everything about it, where you fit on the ice, the terminology that Burnett would use as opposed to John Cooper. I'm not making excuses for Stamkos because that is past its expiry date now. They've got to figure it out. And then I heard the interview with Barry Trotz, and I thought, oh, boy. Like, so if you're Stamkos, you're Marchessault. Ryan O'Reilly dove on the sword the other day. What game was that? Was that after the Monday night game where they were shut out? And, he literally said, I don't think I've ever played worse in terms of trying to generate offense. So they've got a lot of big game players that just aren't on the same page. So when you're talking rebuild, how exactly you tell me, how do you go about that when you've got the contracts that you have that you brought in the off season and then others? How are you doing that? Who are you moving out to do that? It's next to impossible in season. It really is.
Not going to happen. Not happening.
No.
Well, we'll see if they can get a win tonight. They got Washington tonight. So Barry Trotz, his former team, won a cup there. Yeah. Ovi's on fire. The Caps are on fire.
Yeah.
We'll see what comes of it. All right, Dregs. We'll leave it there. We'll do it again soon.
Okay, boys. Have a good one.
Darren Dreger, our TSN Hockey Insider. Ovi at 7 goals on the season.
I love it.
I don't know, man.
There's a chance. It's like Mary Swanson type of thing, but it's like if this guy can put together some consistency and not have a dip, I don't see him doing it, but I mean.
I'm not sure he will either, but I don't think it's a Mary Swanson. Like this
you think
guy.
There's more? Guy knows what to do, right?
Doubting this guy when it comes to scoring goals.
Many Jerry's that he does it this year.
40%.
Wow.
I'm 51.
51.
So you
think a hazy percentage.
That's a great one.
You think it's that's basically saying
that's not a lock. That's just into the I believe. Just
that's
over the line.
Exactly. I thought it was a clever Jerry.
It is. 100%'s a lock, or 0's a lock. 51 is. It is kind of gutless.
50,
no,
that's
say
what
that
you do. I just try to be you. You do it every week.
But
51%.
I think that's accurate with this.
51 is just like, I think this guy could do it.
All he does is score goals.
He
does is score his whole life. Alex Ovechkin scores. And is it a lot of goals he needs to score at a late age? Absolutely. It's not going to be easy. But
they are a better team. They're on a better team this year, too. That helps, right?
Yeah, you would think so for sure. And I've been of the impression like the organization's whole game plan was let's just get Ovi past Gretzky. And clearly that has not been the case because they have put pieces together, including the goaltending position, that's worked for them and worked for them very well. And they're well into a playoff spot right now. They're off to a great start.
Yeah.
And it isn't just about getting Ovi as cookies and, hey, you get out there for 2 minutes on the power play and there's ever an empty net. Everyone just does whatever they can to get him the puck. It's not a house league vibe. They're 8-3. They're off to a great start. Great start.
Yeah.
So
I think you can do it. I'm
40%.
lower. I'm lower than 40, but I want to see it do it. Oh, you're 51. Hayes, you're 40. I'm like 28%, maybe 25%, 1-4. But I'd love to see him make it very interesting.
He's a showman. Man, the guy scored 50 his first year in the league.
What's the better story? He does it this year, or it's the build up to like he's got 7 or 8 next year? Is it a better story if there's the summer and that's like the lead thing for next season, or is it a better story if it happens this year?
I think it's this year, but you risk Gretzky starts traveling with him for the 3 games and he doesn't do it, 4 games and he doesn't do it. And you're like,
I don't
running
think
out of
anybody
time.
likes doing that, to be honest with you. As much as it's respectful and they kind of, I don't know, they don't have to do it. I don't think they like doing that.
Well,
No.
what's the worst one you've heard of in recent memory where the person is traveling with that guy to break the record? Wasn't it just
Judge, I think, with the Maris family.
I was just going to say the Maris family was like following him around forever, and he
went like 10 games or something. They're like, dude, come on, we're in Oakland now. Like, let's come on, like someone just throw him one right down the middle so we can leave and go home.
Like the league might have stepped in and
Marises.
said, could you have a replacement, pitcher come in and just throw him a meatball?
Can we get a pitching machine out here so the Maris family could go home?
Go home. We've been fronting these guys for a month. They've had enough, and they got to fake it when they finally does it. It's like, all right, now
that's
we're
another
happy.
part.
Go
Secretly, you're like, I don't want this guy to beat the record. Like, what are we doing here? Like, we got to be classy, but no, thank you. All right, best bet still to come later in the hour. Sarah Orlesky coming up as well, and as we know, Tay-Tay, she's coming to town. The getaway from Tay-Tay is your last chance, and it's a chance to basically avoid the chaos when Taylor comes to town and go see Travis instead. To enter, visit tsn1050.ca and submit your very own OverDrive-themed song today. You can submit lyrics, send an audio recording, or even record a video, and our favorite song will win tickets to see Kansas City take on Buffalo on November 17th. You'll also get a hotel stay and $500 spending cash. Details at tsn1050.ca. Best bets later in the hour. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, best bets brought to you by FanDuel later in the hour. The Raps in Sacramento playing the Kings. I wonder if Sacramento's got a famous rapper that'll be courtside, like staring down R.J. Barrett tonight.
You think?
Maybe. Maybe Sacramento needs their own rapper to kind of pick a fight with someone on the Raptors. Maybe that's the case tanight.
Wasn't DeMar tight with Drake?
Yes, they were very close, to my knowledge. I don't know how close they were, but yeah, absolutely. And like DeMar he blew up here before Drake did. He arrived in 2009. Drake wasn't some like massive superstar at that point.
No, and DeMar never was either.
Well, and listen, they both kind of came up together, and they were pretty close. And now I guess you just you can't have it.
Not
Drake
buddies
just won't
anymore.
take it. Not buddies anymore. Can't do it
Ugh.
anymore.
It's too bad.
It is too bad. And the Kings are massive favorites tonight. But we'll get to that a little bit later in the hour. But I would say the capital of Canadian sports right now is Winnipeg, Manitoba, where the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, I don't know if they're favored to win the Grey Cup, but we know they've been very successful in the CFL for years, and they're hosting the Western Final this Saturday with the Riders in town. Massive rivalry, big game. Argos in Montreal playing the Alouettes in the East, and the Jets just simply don't lose. They do not lose, and I'm curious if what we're going to see here is the only team that beat the Jets was the Maple Leafs. And could we see Bombers, Argos in the Grey Cup, and the only team to beat the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the playoffs could be the Argos? Maybe Toronto's coming from Winnipeg. But Winnipeg is red hot right now. Let's head out there now and catch up with our good friend. Here's Sara Orlesky. I'm sure you love hearing that, Sarah, that Winnipeg is the capital of Canadian sports. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely would, and especially this weekend. I mean, you mentioned the Western Final that's going on Saturday. It's a 5 p.m. local start, but before that, the Jets are playing Dallas, so it's a doubleheader Saturday. So not only are both teams having a ton of success right now, but you look Saturday in particular, what a weekend to be a Winnipeg sports fan.
Yeah, that's big, and in terms of the Bombers, like people show up, people get loud. I don't know what the weather's been like out there, but couldn't ask for a bigger rivalry with Saskatchewan coming through town. I guess we'll start there. What do you think of the chances of the Bombers going on another Grey Cup run here?
So I think with the way that they've been playing this season and the way, when you think of how it started, you never would have guessed necessarily that this is the scenario that they would find themselves in. But with the way that they have been playing recently, I think and a home field advantage, sold out crowd for it, I think you have to give the edge to the Bombers in this one. They've been there before. It's not that they don't have some areas that they need to shore up a little bit, but you put them in that winner goes to the Grey Cup scenario, and again, in front of Winnipeg sports fans, no, my money would be on Winnipeg.
Sarah, how does the Winnipeg sports fan approach the Jets' start to the season? It's been so fantastic. They're dummying everybody 6-0 every night, it seems. It's been great. But what's the, I don't know if it's cautious or what's the appropriate way to approach it where you can enjoy it and you want it to continue, but you just kind of got to stay a little bit calm?
Yeah, but you think about the success that they had last year, and I mean, playoffs aside, when you look at regular season, they finished with 110 points. I mean, it's easy sometimes, I think, to forget that.
That's a hell of a season.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But you look at the way that they have played so far this year through 13 games, and recognize it's only 13 games, but the consistency that we have seen in their game is something that you haven't seen in years past. They are getting contributions up and down the lineup. Their blue line is contributing offensively. They're playing stingy defense. I mean, they lead the league in goals per game. They're second fewest goals against per game. And there is no panic. And that's something I heard you guys earlier talking about goalie interference. And obviously that was a huge storyline in the game Sunday against Tampa. But even when they got down 2-0 quickly, there was no panic. They were really calm. And in seasons past, and I've covered this team since they first arrived in Winnipeg, in seasons past, when adversity would hit, you would start to get a little bit of nervousness of going, nah, I'm not really sure about this. And then the cameras would pan down the bench and you could even sense it, whether it be through the television or just when you were in the arena watching, that you were always waiting for something to happen in terms of where the wheel's about to fall off a little bit. That is not the case this year. This is such a fun team to watch. Everybody is on board with it. Everybody is contributing, and they all the lines, although obviously different skill levels, they all look the same in terms of what they are doing, the approach that they're having. Good defense, cliche goes, but good defense leads to offense. Everyone has bought in, and it has a different feeling this way in terms of how this team looks when they're winning.
So with Scott Arniel kind of sliding to the left with Bones out, I mean, is it the familiarity? Is that a new coach bump? Has it just been something that's been building over the last couple of years? What you just laid out is everybody kind of being all on the same page. It's all kind of come together here in these first 13 games.
Yeah, and I think that Noodles, it's kind of all of it, to be honest. I mean, the new coach bump, I might go more with even the assistants and what they brought in from a special teams, because the power play, which struggled last season, it was just under 19%, is tops in the league right now, and it's over 44%. So that's obviously been able to have some success, but the familiarity early on, I think, has made a big difference here, because you aren't trying to learn tendencies. Scott Arniel is very well aware of who he has in that room, the personalities, the style of games, and they've just been able to build upon it. And Kyle Connor spoke before the last game against Utah, and he spoke about, when he was asked about everyone buying in really to this idea of playing good defense and then it leading to offense. And he talked about the maturity that this group has shown as well, and that it's not just one of these things. Sometimes it's a process to be able to get here. You can tell that this group has been here for a while together, the veteran core group, and they're taking that next step right now. And so I think it's really that it's a little bit of everything. I don't think anyone would have anticipated that they would have had a 12-1 start, as much as everyone loves to go in and think that they're going to win every game. I mean, this has been a start that Scott Arniel was asked about after the last game. And he said, no, he wouldn't have predicted that it was 12-1, but they just, every game, he said, when adversity is hit, they have just shown that they are calm, and they've just been able to continue to build and get themselves out of it. It's been really impressive to watch, and they're a really fun group to be around right now.
Yeah, well, I would assume so. With Sara Orlesky on the Winnipeg Jets being 12-1, and yet you mentioned Dallas in town on Saturday, and you got Colorado in town tomorrow. Like who scares you if you're a Jets fan? You know, looking around the Central. You know, we know what happened in the playoffs last year against Colorado. We know what Dallas is capable of. Are those the two that scare you the most? Is there another outlier? Like, where does Winnipeg stand in terms of the division?
Yeah, I think that those two, I mean, when you look at the talent, as much as Colorado's been streaky, I mean, the injuries that they've had to contend with and everything this season, when you look at the skill that they have, what we've seen from Nathan McKinnon now, when Kel McCarr, don't know if he's going to be able to be in the lineup tomorrow. You obviously have to take that team very seriously. Dallas as well. But how about Minnesota with the start that they've had, guys? I mean, as much as people talk about Winnipeg surprising people, I think that Minnesota certainly has as well. So this is going to be another tough division. I think you look at the top 3 or 4 teams in this division, and there's a little bit of separation, at least in terms of points, between the rest of the division. But this is showing once again that this is going to be a tough out amongst the teams within the Central Division. But the Winnipeg Jets right now, every team that's being put in front of them, they are finding a way to get the job done, and again, to just bring consistency with their game, which is something that I think as you look longer term and you look as the games get tougher, we know how they change after Christmas. I think that it bodes well for them to be establishing that now.
Well, there is one loss in the loss column, and that is courtesy of the Maple Leafs. It is courtesy of the Maple Leafs, Sarah, and I'm sure you were there. I mean, what's it like when the Leafs roll through town? Go Leaf, go Chance. They sounded pretty loud. You know,
it's
I'm
a
on
total
the couch
Toronto Sports Network comment right there.
That's
Sarah.
just a fact.
Toronto Sports Network.
It's a fact.
I can't believe you're letting that happen. Oh, I mean, I know you're a supporter also of the Jets. I know that you're a fan of them as well. It is a Toronto sports comment. Can't believe we're going to let Bryan Hayes get away with that.
Listen, a win's a win. The crowd looked pretty imbalanced to me. I don't know, Sarah. You tell me.
No. There's always going to be Leafs fans. I think that's just like when you go into other buildings. I mean, there's Jets fans. There's always going to be Leafs fans when they come into town. It's the only time of the year that they come through Winnipeg. But this year, I mean, the Jets fans were also very loud. I don't know if you couldn't hear that through the broadcast line, but they absolutely were. And as much as the Leafs came out and, I mean, obviously had to assert themselves given the rough start that they had coming into that game, I think when you look at the pushback that the Jets gave as the game went on as well, I don't know if you're a Leafs fan. I'm not saying that maybe you're getting a little bit nervous as that game went on, but...
Yeah. It was dicey. It was 4-0 quick, I believe, and then it got very, very dicey as the game went on. There's no disputing that. It is a Leafy thing to ask about the Leaf fans in Western Canada.
It was a terrible thing to say.
Yeah, it's a bad question.
It is the way it goes. It is the way it goes.
You should have played La Bamba for Hayes there, Sarah. You should have played La Bamba for Hayes.
Just absolutely drowned me out with La Bamba. But, it's been a great start. And who knows, maybe we see Argos Bombers in a Grey Cup. How would you handicap the chances of that happening in the next 2 weeks?
It could be a very good opportunity to be able to see it. I think it'll be interesting, too, if that happens, and to be inside in BC. You're in the dome for it. But, look, I like the way that the Bombers have continued to play. And you give me Mike O'Shea in a championship game. When their offense hasn't been going as well, maybe it's stalled out at times. They have Sergio Castillo, who's been money when it comes to the kicking game. And, as we saw in their game against Montreal, you just get a little bit of help now and then. A little bit of wind kicks up. Some crazy things happen. You never know, even indoors, when all of a sudden a fan gets going. But I love the idea of the Bombers being able to get back there again. And look, as long as it's a competitive game, and I'd love to see that in the West and the East, it's great for the CFL. It's a great weekend for them.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big week. Final in the West out in Winnipeg, final in the East in Montreal. And again, the Jets have Colorado tomorrow, Dallas on Saturday. It's gonna be a really fun couple of games coming up. She is Sara Orlesky. Always appreciate you finding time for us, Sarah. We'll do it again soon.
I look forward to it. Take care, guys.
There she is, Sara Orlesky from the capital of Canadian sports, Winnipeg, Manitoba. They're in the driver's seat right now. They are leading the charge.
Still early, though. 13 games, man. Like, I don't know. Like, I I believe what O said, like that Colorado team, they get healthy. That Dallas team, they get healthy. They're going to be pushing up.
What
that Nathan McKinnon starts breathing smoke out of his nose.
Well, he had 5 points last night.
Yeah, he's going to start. They're getting Nichushkin back. But I will say one thing, Jamie, and I know I always go to this. If they don't get some saves, man, like they seem to – it's either 5-2 or they give up a 6 spot. It's like enough's enough.
Well, at some point they need stability there. Like now,
no kidding.
Georgie 5, I think, led the league in wins last year just because they were a good team. But what he was doing was not being the cause of losses. Early on, it was like this guy, they're throwing it at the net. It's just going in. They brought up that Justus Annunen, who has actually, you want to talk about big heads, I think he's got a head like Nice. Like he's a big kid. So I like him. I just don't know if it's a little bit too much to ask of a 23-year-old goalie who hasn't been in the league very much. They went and got Kaapo Kähkönen from the Jets. I think they pulled him off of waivers. And he's a decent player. But I think at some point there might be a marketplace to just bring in a stabilizing force there, kind of a Jake Allen, what New Jersey did last year, bringing in a Jake Allen. I wonder if Dan Vladar might be in play at some point from the Calgary Flames. To me, I think
they're going to have to upgrade there, or at least supplement.
Well, just have
Georgiev.
Somebody else.
Have someone else as an option.
I agree.
But what about the Canadian power rankings? What's your Jerry's on Winnipeg holding on to the top spot all year?
I don't know.
Right now, it's very high. Right now, it's 90% due to depth. Because if you look at the other teams, that sounds like you got a 0% chance.
No. I'm not. Listen. You're right. Right now, I guess what I'm saying is, like 2 weeks ago, Edmonton was a lock to win the Stanley Cup, and the Leafs. Well, they were going to get the Berube bump, and those are the two teams that are fighting with them. I would. Although Vancouver's off to a great start. Like Vancouver is doing it without Demko, literally, and without Pettersson figuratively.
Basically.
But he practiced today, Demko.
Demko's taking shot. There's still shots of him in there taking.
Honestly, I'm done with the updates, dude. Did you update? You had an update, Hayes, that he took shots from his teammates yesterday.
Live shots.
That was like that was an update on the TSN internal or something. Like that's what it was. Like
Barrasso, only shots from NHL players.
Dude, if you put eyes on Tommy Barrasso skating out of the net telling the assistant coach, don't ever take shots on me again, only NHL players, it's the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
It really is.
That's one of my favorite stories.
It is.
Ever, because the assistant thinks he's pretty good, probably played junior, maybe played in
No, former NHL player.
Yeah.
Former NHL player, and you just skate right out of the net and shaking his head like a goalie skating
Who was
out.
it? Was it Jeff Daniels? He said that too?
No, I'm not going to say who he said it to.
Because I remember Jeff
skate
Daniels.
Out, and I had the perfect view to tell I had the story like in my mind for the rest of my life because I was behind it and he skated out and he goes, NHL players shoot on me only, please. And I just was like, I love that so much.
It's
such an ignorant comment. It's like this guy was just trying to flip one out his pad, skate right out. No, thanks.
Sorry, that'll throw me off my game.
That is just so. That's a
only
tough
prepare
one.
for National Hockey League shots.
Well, do you remember when Tommy Barrasso, I think he was playing for the Sens, and he got interviewed, and they talked about a puck that hit the post, and he looked at whoever was interviewing him. He said, "What do you want me to save the ones that missed the net?"
Yeah, like how dare you?
Yeah.
He was a beauty, though. That guy just had like a swagger to him, like a chip. You know, like I kind of love that. There's people that
he won
have
a lot,
that.
man. He won a lot, Tom Barrasso. Maybe his strategy makes sense. Maybe the other goalies in the league need to do that.
Yeah,
sorry,
exactly.
can't do it, man. Rick Tocchet. Sorry, Rick, you're not allowed to shoot at me. Ripped home 50 in the league at one point, but you don't play anymore, so you're not allowed.
He had the best of the best everything. Like, he had the best suits. Tom Barrasso, like, cufflink. It was like you would just think he's the richest man in the universe if you saw him at dinner.
I love it.
And we had a lot of dinners together because he was there. He got to town, and I was the guy that had to take everybody out to dinner. And he is a great one of my good friends in hockey. But man, did he look like a rock star!
Unreal. All right, best bets coming up. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. Best bets brought to you by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Looking at the NBA tonight, Raptors plus 11 in Sacramento. They've been keeping games close. I'm going to take the points here. I'm taking the points. They just kept it close in Denver. They just beat Sacramento at home. They've been going to overtime. They've been competing, and I think they'll compete tonight. Grady Dick's been on fire. I think that continues tonight. 20-plus points for Grady. Darren Fox, 2-plus made threes, and Jakob Poeltl recording 10-plus rebounds. That parlay paying plus 364. Today's best bets powered by FanDuel. Please play responsibly, 19-plus, physically located in Ontario. All right. We got Raptors in action. We got the Thursday nighter tomorrow. Big one. Ravens-Bengals tomorrow.
I'll tell you what about a big moment. You said a signature game for the Leafs-Boston yesterday. This is a signature matchup for you and that other turkey. If you don't get it together, we will abuse you on
Guess
Friday.
what, dude? It's your pick, and you guys are going to fumble all over yourselves tomorrow. You cannot get this game right. I already know who you're going to pick. And I already know it's wrong. I'm seeing this game so clearly tomorrow, and you guys just simply are not going to do that. So I look forward to that. I'm calling my shot right now. We made halftime adjustments, Noodles. We're down a field goal at the half, man.
Listen, and all you've done is you found a way back into it. Now don't let it slip away, though. Don't let it slip away.
We won't. Everyone knows we're second-half players. We always have been.
Fair enough.
All right. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out. We appreciate it. Everyone for tuning in today. TV, radio, podcast, web, we appreciate that. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at
Hayes and Bro are at a Nick Cage level. 4 p.m.?
We'll chat then.